So for some students, they might be considering taking a gap year or deferring their degree, or even you might be also, in the midst of a degree program, and you might consider taking a break off for whatever reason, and especially in times of the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of students are also, not wanting to go to school, given the difficulties with online schooling. So is taking a gap year or deferring a year a good idea? So my perspective on taking a gap year or deferring a year is actually not a bad idea. I think it is quite good for in a lot of different ways. The first is, when you're in university, you might be attending first year as a 16 or 17 or 18-year-old. You're still very young at that age. You haven't really developed much maturity yet. A lot of things you're still trying for the very first time. And even if you have some working experience, you're still quite immature. And that's not a negative comment in any way. It's just a matter of life, right? Like, when you're a 16, 17, 18-year-old, you just haven't really developed yourself yet. Your brain is still developing. So a lot of that maturity comes with age at a later age. For example, at, maybe at age 25, that's when you start becoming more mature. And until you hit age 25, for example, a lot of people in that age range are still quite immature in various aspects. So by taking a gap year is not a bad idea, because it gives you that year to further mature yourself. So even if you're coming in, into first year university at a year later, you're going to have a bit more of a mature mindset than someone, even compared to yourself a year prior. And this is a good thing, because university and college is a huge transition. It requires a lot of motivation and commitment and dedication, which, requires quite a bit of maturity. And also in university, oftentimes a lot of students get depressed or very disappointed with their grades and whatnot. So you really need that maturity to help guide your emotions and also to help guide your next steps, which is why taking a gap year or deferring a year is not a bad idea, because at least you give yourself that, extra year to further develop your maturity. The second thing that I think, taking a gap year or deferring years is not a bad idea is because if you, spend your gap year well, further developing yourself, whether it be taking on or learning new skill set, or finding a part-time or even a full-time during that year, as a student internship, for example, or even, taking some online courses, for example, on Coursera, or you might be teaching yourself data science because you're really interested in becoming a data scientist and, pursuing different Kaggle competitions. These are all different avenues that will allow you to not only upgrade yourself, because you're giving yourself more experience, more skill set, which makes you more competitive, as a student when you apply to summer internships, for example, once you get into university or college. But it's also, time well spent in terms of helping you further explore what your interests are. It is not uncommon for students to think, they are interested in, for example, investing or investment management, until they try out for the first time, and then they realize they absolutely hate it and they need to, pivot and find a different interest area. So taking that gap year, assuming that, you're being productive, you're trying new things, you're learning new skills, this is a good way for you to test out your different interest and hobby areas, so that you have a better understanding of yourself and you have a head start in terms of figuring out what your career pathway may look like, and, what career prospects you might be interested in the future. So again, taking a gap year is not a bad idea in my opinion, because one, it lets you develop that maturity that you will need, and two, it also allows you to, give you time to upskill or upgrade your existing experiences or skill set, but it also allows you to further explore what really interests you, and this will help you, give you time to think about whether or not you still want to continue with the existing program you're in, or that you already accepted but deferred, or that you haven't applied to any yet, and it gives you time to really consider what do you actually want to attend for the next 4 years. So if you're considering taking a gap year or deferring a year, these are some of the benefits that I do see in terms of doing so. And given that, usually a gap year or deferring a program, most students only really consider a year top. So this isn't a really long time. So, and if you think I'm wasting a year, I would disagree with that, just because a year flies by and you won't really notice, losing a year out. And like the difference between a 23-year-old new grad versus a 22-year-old new grad is so small that most people wouldn't notice it. But I think on the benefit side, taking a gap year or deferring year will give you a lot more opportunity and pros that you should really consider if you are really considering taking a gap year or deferring a year.